Good evening, friends, and welcome to another edition of Monday Moods with Samvad. For those of you joining us for the first time, Samvad stands for support, advocacy, and mental health interventions for children in vulnerable circumstances and distress. We are a national initiative and integrated resource on child protection, mental health, and psychosocial care. Monday Moods with Samvad is our humble effort towards facilitating convergence amongst child related stakeholders and creating a platform for the continuous exchange of knowledge on critical child issues. I now request our moderator for the day, Dr. Shekhar Seshadri, to please introduce today's talk and our speaker. Dr. Seshadri, of course, needs little introduction himself. Dr. Seshadri has worked extensively, not just in the area of child and adolescent mental health, but critically also in its interface with other key child-related spaces and stakeholders. Education then occupies a central role in this regard. Sir, over to you.
Thank you very much, Saurabh, and a very warm welcome to everyone joining us today for another edition of Monday Moods. The subject, friends, for this evening's talk is imagining school education, the new education policy 2020. Now, I would also like to let you know that the new education policy, when it initially came, seemed to be a very complex document to navigate, but it had a certain context and background. And in fact, the steering committee of NEP 2020, headed by Professor Kasturi Rangan, and the 20-odd focus groups that have been set up, Samvad is represented in the guidance and counseling focus group and attended the recent meeting of the steering committee. In addition, Samvad is also represented in a separate committee that has been set up by the Ministry of Women and Child Development, specifically looking at early childhood care and education. In this background, it gives me great pleasure to welcome Subir Shukla to this evening's talk. Friends, Subir ji is an author and educational consultant and has previously served as an educational quality advisor to the Ministry of Human Resource Development, Government of India. As part of his work on the qualitative aspects of educational services in the country, he developed the quality framework for the implementation of the right to education and the Sarva Shiksha Abhiyan, India's Education for All program. Currently, Subirji serves as the principal coordinator, Group IGNIS, which comprises of IGNIS ERG, an education consulting company, and IGNIS Pehel, a non-profit NGO, and Manan Books, a low-cost publishing company. Group IGNIS works on large-scale systemic change in education, advising state and national governments in Asia, developing appropriate models for vulnerable population groups, and improving the quality of education of governmental as well as NGO educational programs. This, friends, involves supporting the development of improved curricula, textbooks, teacher training, and capacity building initiatives at various levels. Additionally, through their work, the group also reaches out to teachers and grassroots functionaries, thereby making an effort to bring about improvement wherever they are, in whichever way they can. The NEP is an exceedingly important policy framework for school education with much to discuss, deliberate upon, and indeed critique. With these words, I now request Subir to please take the floor. And as you hear Subir, when you have issues, please put them on chat. We will have a session in the end where we'll take some issues that you want to raise or issues that you want to clarify to make this session really participative and meaningful. Subirji, our pleasure and honor to have you on Monday Moods. Over to you. Subirji, you're on mute.
Good evening. Can you hear me?
Yes, very clearly.
All right.
Go ahead.
Very good. Thank you so much. I want to share my screen. Just allow me to do that. Okay, will you share it from there? All right.
No, it's.
It's easier if I share.
Please go ahead.
All right. No, it's disabled at the moment. You have to make me a co-host, I think.
Yes.
So while this happens, hello everyone, and nice to be meeting all of you like this. I'm at a slightly difficult situation, location-wise. So it's very possible that occasionally my network may go off. In any case, I hope that that will not get in the way. Okay, so I assume you can see my screen now.
Yes, Subirji. You can go on full screen now.
Yes. Right. So, somebody who had given up smoking said, this is very easy to do. I've done it many times before. So basically what happens is that it's a bit like how we keep reimagining school for the last 30 years. Every few years, we keep thinking, now things will be better. Now things will be better. We did that with Lok Jumbesh, then with DPEP, then with SSA. It's been a process that has been on with the RTE, of course. Hopefully, in the last 30 years, we've learned quite a few things which we can now put together and make NEP 2020 a really solid success. There's a lot to speak on, but obviously, we cannot cover everything. So I'm going to restrict myself to certain aspects, and you can see them as we go along. To begin with, when we talk of NEP, we often think of big things. How will the system change? Will it be 3 plus 5 plus 5 plus 4, and so on? But actually, in very concrete terms, what should it really mean for what happens in the life of a child in school and often outside of school as well? So I've just listed a series of verbs. Please read them. Just take a half a minute to read them. And Saurabh, do start timing me. If when it's around 35 minutes, just let me know. I'll stop definitely before 40 minutes.
Will do, sir.
All right, thank you. So actually, so much should happen at school. Children should get the opportunity to talk, play, work, write. I'm trying not to use words like interact, which contain many things. The more precise we are, the better we will understand what it is we are really trying to get. Listen, draw, experiment, connect with each other, with the material, with the environment, with the teacher. Read all kinds of things, explain to each other, ask without being afraid, instruct each other, younger ones getting support from older students, for example. Eat, narrate, try, encourage, something which is often missing in our context. Now, post-pandemic, practice hygiene, exchange, meet, discover, and so on. There's a long list. All of this is supposed to get affected by what happens as a result of the NEP. So the question before us is, how much of this was happening before NEP? And certainly before COVID-19. And therefore, as we go ahead, how is this going to change after the NEP? What will we do so that this happens? And after COVID-19, these are the big questions that are staring at us in the face. There are efforts underway. All of you know about them, I'm sure, and also the limitations and the directions in which they are going. A question often is, how do we get there? And very often, that point is left to teachers. It is teachers' business. Actually, it is not the teachers' business at all. Yes, they do have to do things, but in reality, it is those who are leading the process in the education system who really have to make this happen. So how can the system get there? And I'll be talking a little bit about that. But at the same time, this is something which all of us have to be involved in. Otherwise, it doesn't happen at all. So how can we, ordinary people, contribute to this? Now, all of you would have read the policy. So I've selected a few things which are very critical when it comes to re-examining what happens in the school. And I'm not talking of higher education at the moment, really, and not even all aspects of school, but the critical ones which impact children very directly. The policy talks that we need inclusive and equitable quality. What equitable means really is that each child gets that kind of support, that degree of support as is needed for that child to attain the optimum that she is capable of, and that can often be a lot higher than we imagine. The word inclusive does not mean that the system is being large-hearted and is just, patronizingly including. Actually, the word inclusive means responsive. It is the system's duty to respond to all the needs of children, which it has not done sufficiently yet. And what this really requires is a reconfiguring, reorganizing. And once again, this is a very important point which often gets forgotten. Slogans sometimes they lose meaning because we keep saying this so many times. Education is not for passing an exam. It's for lifelong learning opportunities for all. It's a process that you begin in school, but you continue it throughout your life. But what is it for? It's for all-round development. This has been defined to some extent. Multidisciplinary activities, of course, many domains. Not only preparing children to be engineers and doctors, but all walks of life. Humanities are as important. Not running madly only after English, but also your mother tongue, local languages, the rich diversity of culture of the countries and society. A very big point really is to focus on the marginalized, disadvantaged, and underrepresented groups. Now, why this is important is because for some reason, the manner in which school and education is developed and conceptualized, and if you happen to be from an advantaged family, you really succeed. If you are from a very poor family, like a rickshawala's daughter comes first, it is so rare that a newspaper will print this, that every time there's a board exam, you will see the peon's daughter does well in exam, because she's not supposed to do well. So this is actually quite a radical statement if it is seen in that perspective. This requires a big change in school culture. A school is one that succeeds where everyone works with each other and not in competition with each other, and draws upon the strengths of all. Clearly, a teacher is not merely an employee, but a hub around whom things revolve. Is at the center of fundamental reform. This is a very important statement. Again, it's very radical because in our context, we run a kind of command and control system. Teachers are treated more as employees whose job it is to follow instruction, but this is now talking about empowering them. And a little later, I'll talk about what it means. And of course, there's a revamping of the education structure with preschool coming in, governance changing, school complex, for example, and later, perhaps some changes at the state administration level as well. These are some priorities as selected. There are many others, but these will have quite an impact. Now, what is it that the school is required to deliver? What is the kind of student, child or a learner who emerges from a school? I'll just read this out because it's an important statement. Good human beings capable of rational thought, not reliant only on WhatsApp University, and action, not just onlookers, but willing to take the right step. Possessing compassion and empathy, not thinking of themselves as separate from others. Courage and resilience. Courage is also moral courage here that is being talked about. Resilience is not only as an individual, but as a group. Scientific temper and creative imagination. Now, this is again a tough one because in our country, if someone asks a lot of questions, he's often told you're acting smart, because being smart is perhaps not a good idea. With sound ethical moorings and values. Engaged, yes. Engaged is important because it means the person's involvement is from his or her own side and not merely one way. Productive and contributing citizens for building an equitable, inclusive, and plural. This word plural is extremely important. As all of you know, we've been having a lot of tension as to which strand shall be the main strand or dominant one. And so the word plural implies that as far as the NEP 2020 is concerned, it values the diversity. These are big implications for everything, and we'll talk about that. But this requires certain kind of educational institutions which welcome students where they feel cared for, which are safe, stimulating, provide a wide range of experiences, not just limited to listening to teacher, which also have good infrastructure. Why this again is important is because somehow when it comes to the poor, we always talk of low cost. In fact, when it comes to the poor, we should be talking of high cost. Appropriate resources conducive to learning, available to all, including children who are otherwise do not have enough resources for them. They may be the most marginalized, with disabilities, migrant groups, and so on. Now, one direct implication of this is that we need to start looking at the school from a certain lens. So the one that I found most useful is to look at 4 environments of a school. A school has a social emotional environment. There are relationships between children, between older and younger ones, between boys and girls, between teacher and student, between community and the school. All of these have a very important role to play in every aspect, not only in social, emotional, or mental health, but specifically in learning as well. The cognitive environment is, of course, how challenging, interesting learning is. The physical environment is the infrastructure and how it is utilized. The organizational culture and the more the managerial organization, how are decisions made, how are resources utilized, how are differences managed, how is discipline maintained. All of those aspects come in the organizational culture. And the school is linked horizontally. There are officials and inspectors and others whose job it is to engage with the school, but also the school is also linked with other departments, for example, the water and sanitation aspects or health aspects. It's linked with SMC, with community, and so on. So all of those have to be seen as an entirety. From time to time, I will keep touching upon what the role of leaders. By leaders, I mean anyone who is in a position to take a decision or make things happen. It can be at the state level, it can be at just a school headmaster level or whoever. But it's the responsibility of leaders to define these with all those who are in. This is very important. If it is left loose, ambiguous, not well defined, then anything and everything will go. This does not mean that we need to have strict standardized approach, but we need a broad orientation towards everyone involving some sort of agreed benchmark that they say this is the minimum that we want to have, and then work towards them in a collaborative and transparent manner. Again, these are not that easy. Collaboration, say, between community and teachers is often missing. There's a hierarchical relationship without trust that we see. Transparent is again a problem. Very often you might find decisions are taken without really involving stakeholders. So these are very big asks. So how do we see things happening in the future? Let's take a field trip to 2030. NEP has been implemented. It is having an effect. So if you go to an ECCE center, which runs for 3 years or so, you will see there's a focus on holistic learning, and there's a broad curriculum framework which has been made, which also takes into account 0 to 3 years old, 3 to 5 years old. It brings in local traditions as well as a contemporary understanding of child development. This is very important because what happens is that a lot of the times preschool tends to become like school and trying to get children to perform, learn ABC and so on. This is a little different. Foundational learning and readiness for it. Oracy is a very big thing, especially in our multilingual context. So home and local languages are actually encouraged. Multilingual education, the early forms are introduced, and socio-emotional learning is emphasized as well. So you see a lot of play, genuinely play and play-based, not formal teaching happening. You see, it's very important that it is not schoolified and formal. You see that children get a chance to use their senses in a very big way. There are a lot of things that they can touch, hold, manipulate. Materials are used. There are social activities, things to do with each other, local games, exposure to picture books. All of that is happening. And there is that formal assessment is not there. There is a kind of way of keeping track and informing parents on different aspects of students' development. If you look at a slightly older class, now this is evolved. The local language and foundational learning are more in focus. Subjects are being introduced. And now the pedagogy takes a little different form. The acronym ERAC is about experience, reflection, application, and consolidation. Experiential learning is not about just singing a dance or playing a game. Those are just games. If you do not reflect on what you have experienced, you do not move towards learning. I mean, this has been said by Dewey and many others long back. But equally, as you reflect and your learning starts to formulate, when you get to apply what you're learning into different contexts or do it again in a better way, that's how your learning really grows. And when you get a chance to articulate what you've learned, you kind of formulate it, put it in your mind like a schema, and begins to stay there with you. So experiential learning, which NEP emphasizes, now begins to be more visible. Our focus is not just on content, but on what children can do. So there's a lot of application-oriented work. And one important point that NEP makes is that it's not said that teachers must teach this only in this way, but teachers take a call. So there's a lot of trust given that they take a call on the pedagogical practice that works from them. Assessment now becomes a little more regular. It is formative. It emphasizes higher order learning outcomes to optimize learning. A holistic progress card is made. Parents are now getting involved in the process. When you come to class 3 to 5, you find that more conceptual emphasis, higher order aspects are emphasized even more. Local culture, social emotional learning continues. ERAC certainly continues, but now cross-curricular linkages, arts and sports are integrated in an interesting way. And assessment continues to grow in depth in keeping with this. In upper primary, classes 6 to 8, this is a very critical set of years because it prepares children for secondary, and many who do not continue beyond this will need what they learn here for the rest of their lives. So it prepares them for world readiness, for critical thinking. Now, this is the time when students start getting support to ask questions, especially the question, why? Why are things the way they are all around them? They get some preliminary exposure to vocations, and they may also make choices about what they will study. Socio-emotional learning, of course, continues. ERAC continues, but critical thinking also now becomes even more important. And this is reflected in assessment as well. When you come to secondary, now there is more mobility across subjects. The element of heritage, knowledge heritage, I would say, not just one category of heritage, but overall the community's knowledge heritage comes in. And the ERAC, experiential learning process, becomes more evolved accordingly, which also is reflected in assessment. NEP does talk of revamping board exams. Idea is to minimize coaching and memorization. This is not easy at all, and that this whole thing leaves us with a few questions. Will the right to education be extended to secondary? We don't know yet. If it is, it will make things easier for us. Everyone wants English so much that the focus on mother tongue may be threatened. Market may dominate over policy. One of the things which is very important, which is not spelled out sufficiently, is that there's a lot of diversity in students. And not only of levels, but of backgrounds, culture, language, economic status, and so on. So if marginalization is there, if diversity is there, then the idea that you teach the same thing with the same method and the same material to all the children at the same time is something that's not going to work. So we need a differential approach where different children do different things in the class, yet each one learns the best that they can learn. How will that happen? This needs to be spelled out. It's not that it can't be spelled out. There are models in India which have worked on this, but policy needs to back this up a little bit more, I believe. So what these expectations do is they leave us with a situation where those in leadership positions need to do a few things. Especially after the pandemic, when teachers have themselves experienced a lot of trauma. Our education system is not geared to emotional or social emotional aspects at all. Officials are more used to asking teachers, have you done what I told you to do? Instead of, how are you feeling today? Can I help you? But that's what is now expected, both post-pandemic and with the NEP. The shift to a caring and inclusive culture has to start from the top. ECC presents many challenges. Your forum has been discussing it. Both private and public school system have to come together. Resources need to be brought in. Schools where co-location is happening need a lot of inputs. So this planning probably is underway, but this is a big area of work. And foundation learning is now an urgent mission. Right now, there's a baseline for foundation learning assessment is going on in the whole country at the moment. But the problem with this is that this has been worked upon several times. We had Padhe Bharat, Bade Bharat, for example, which is a very similar form of foundation learning. So there's a need to analyze why it did not work and take action accordingly.
Apologies for the intrusion, sir. I think some of the participants are having difficulty with the audio. If you could perhaps put the device closer to you, sir.
All right. Okay. I can't see the chat because my screen is full.
No problem, sir.
All right. Thank you. Is it better?
Yes, sir. I think the audio is a lot clearer now.
All right. Fine. So, all right. So another expectation from leaders is that they will enable teacher autonomy. And by teacher autonomy, we do not mean that teachers will do what they like. What it means is that teachers will spell out what they are going to do and will say what they need support in, and they will do what they said they will do. The SCRT is being seen as the a source for change management here. But again, I have not seen enough evidence of investment in the SCRT to get to this point. Overall, as far as teachers are concerned, a very big issue for them is that the time that they get to work on the actual teaching learning process keeps getting reduced due to various reasons. So how can that be increased more and more is something which the policy will need to enable. Now, since the focus is on disadvantaged and marginalized groups, what does this mean in concrete terms? There are groups who cannot attend every day. There are groups who cannot follow the language of the classroom. who cannot participate in many things due to many reasons, who may not have resources or support. So what kind of school will actually lead to a situation where every child can participate? It will be the kind of school which will not insist on following simply a fixed set of periods in the whole day. It will be a little more flexible. It will say, whenever you can come, I will find a way to do something which is at your level and which you can participate in. And believe me, it is possible to do that. Maybe in the question answer, I will take this up in more detail. So a flexible design, a responsive approach, a differential classroom. One very important useful thing is that every child brings a lot of knowledge to the class. A tribal child knows a lot about plants and animals. A rack picker knows so much about materials. A child who goes out fishing knows a lot about the sea. A child who goes herding cattle knows so much about the seasons, about where water may be found, and so on. How can these children who are actually experts in real life be treated with respect in the class rather than as if they do not know anything at all? So the way to make this happen, for the leaders really is to partner with teachers to find out what it is that their children are like. Instead of just telling them on this day, please teach this. Do not focus on inputs. Do not say that do this in 5 days. Instead, this is the level that you have to reach. How will you reach there? And make all the inputs that are necessary, but actually get to that. This is important. For example, when we do teacher training, if I give everyone training for just 5 days exactly, some people will do very well with that, but a lot may not. But instead, if I were to say, after this training, this is what a teacher must be able to seem to be doing for so much time, then for some teachers, I may have to do very different things because my outcome is important, not just the input. It's again important to adapt to local situations. There are a lot of strengths also, not only disadvantages. Every time we look at teachers, we think of them as missing something, but actually maybe they have certain strengths themselves. And lastly, when decisions are made, we need to prioritize the interests of the disadvantaged. Every time we talk about certain things, you might hear people saying, but what will happen to meritorious students? The meritorious students will take care of themselves. It is those who are left behind that we really need to be bothered about. Now, all of you know that there is a change in structure. There is a big emphasis on higher order learning. Let me explain what I mean by higher order learning. So when you talk of, for example, something like reading, being able to recognize all the letters of the alphabet, being able to put together the letters to form words, and being able to read a basic sentence and be able to say its meaning is basic. But being able to formulate an opinion or a view on what you read and give a reason for that, and this can start from class 1 actually, that is higher order. And this includes all the basic stuff, but it includes a lot more. So that's what NAP is talking about. Take decisions in daily life using the mathematics you know, not just knowing the algorithms. So that's how you go beyond memorization. That's why reflection and application is important based on the kind of experiences you create. It emphasizes both national and local aspects coming together. Willy-nilly, because of the pandemic, the technology has been introduced. Very important aspect of technology is that most of the time you find that technology is seen as something which prepares children for exams, gives answers to questions which they are not asked. Technology empowerment, it might be better to ask interesting questions and then leave it to children to find out exactly how many liters of water does your family use in the whole day. If you found yourself in a situation where you had X condition, how would you manage? And so on. Naturally, because of this, we cannot manage with the kind of assessment that we have had. We need a very formative assessment kind of approach where you are constantly assessing, but the child is also assessing herself to see how much you are progressing. And we need wherein teachers are setting goals. It's not a standardized approach, but a standards-oriented approach, which prepares children for life. And that is what will help us to go beyond the coaching shop and institution, which is what the NEP is also talking about. However, I must point out that there are contradictions, though board exams are, as we mentioned, will be rehauled. But for example, detention was brought back. Board exams are a huge industry in the country, so it's not going to be easy to change this. In fact, there were reports that because during the lockdown, tech companies did so well that tech companies got together and put pressure on governments not to reopen schools for a long time. So anyone who makes a huge amount of money because something is not going well in education becomes strong enough to put pressure on government to not implement certain things. That's a lobby. So we will have to see how that rolls out. And for example, as part of NEP, now we have combined university entrance tests happening, and already coaching institutions have come out with advertisements that they are preparing students for those. Now, teachers are, of course, at the heart of the process. National standards are being developed. 50 hours of continuous professional development is also being developed mainly through online mode right now. But the thing is, much of the in-service development that I have seen, it's all about what topics to cover. That's a very limited way of looking at it. We really need to know what is it that teachers will do or stop doing afterwards, and how will we get there? What will CRC, BRC, diets do so that this happens? A big limitation we face is that trainers themselves cannot do what they're asking teachers to do. So if you're talking about experiential learning and the teacher participates in a training program, but they only see lecture, that is what they're going to do in their own class. Teachers cannot deliver what they have not experienced. Also, teacher education tends to focus a lot on preparing teachers with knowledge. That is the ability to do. But performance is what a person actually does. That does not happen by training alone. It happens by creating conditions for success. If a teacher has too many children, or does not have enough time, or is not empowered to make change in the sequence that will work in his or her class, that teacher will not experience success and will give up. As long as teachers are made to only follow instructions, that on this day you should teach this, irrespective of where you are, then they will not take responsibility. They will feel that they're asked to do what they cannot do. And you are not going to see much change. Instead, to get change to happen, start by listening to teachers. Then asking them, what do you see happening in your class 3 months from now? What will children be doing which they're not doing right now? How can I support you? Trust the teachers, and then get out of the way and see what they do. I'm not saying this just as a matter of vision. This is something I've done in many places, in many countries. It always works. There's a lot of data to back this. And lastly, teachers are often taken out of school for many things. Perhaps that is something we can seriously look at reducing. So there is assessment of teacher performance. There's a good way to do it, and there's a very bad way to do it. And unfortunately, very often the bad way is the one that works. In many places, if you please your officers, you do their work, that's how you are seen as a good teacher, which is a pathetic way to be seen as a good teacher. So how can we define performance which is connected with classroom processes that actually lead to improved learning? How can we recognize teachers on basis of that? Again, this has been done recently. For example, in 8,500 schools in UP, a big project was implemented where this was done. So when teachers feel that if they perform, that performance is noticed and they are recognized, they are brought in as a resource person for others, that leads to motivation. On the other hand, if they perform and they're told, why are you doing all this? We will also have to do it. Then that leads to reduction in performance. Again, this is where leaders can make a very big difference. So the core to make it happen is to have indicators that are visible, observable, sometimes measurable for performance at level of school, block. This is again a very important thing. You cannot see change only at the level of school without seeing change at the level of state, district, block, and cluster. If you want student learning to improve 5%, teacher has to improve 20%. But CRC, BRC have to improve 40%. That has to improve 60%. And these percentages can be defined and measured. Later, if you're interested, we can talk about that. One good way to make this happen is to do a group rating approach. That is, rate all the teachers in a school together. Rate all the schools in a cluster together. And whatever the rating of all the schools, that is the rating of the administrator too. It is not okay if the administrator is seen as very good, everyone else is seen as very bad. So if you create this kind of skin in the game, you will see a shift happening. Again, this has been tried and tested. We know it works. Now, this is the direction in which we were headed, but then the pandemic came. After the pandemic, there are a few shifts. Our students are not the same anymore. Many have dropped out. Many have come in from private school into our government schools. And they've experienced a different set of 2 years. Not this learning loss is something which is sort of very limited way of understanding what they've been through. They might have been through trauma. They might have learned a lot of new things. And of course, they missed being with their friends. So the students are no more the same. The manner in which we teach them also cannot be the same. They have experienced being with, many of them have engaged more with technology or just being outside or being on their own. They've not necessarily been learning through books, materials, or listening to teachers. At the same time, we need to take care of them more in terms of the socio-emotional aspects, mental health issues as well. Something we never did earlier. What we teach is also becoming quite different because now we have a lot to cover up. The NEP is also making shifts and changes. Who will teach? The teacher is also not the same. Earlier, we said that, children's learning level is low, but teacher knows what to do or teacher is okay. But now, teacher has also been through the same kind of trauma. The children have been through the same kind of difficulties, not been through an easy time at all. And inside, in the system, a lot of things are different from before. Not only have administrators had issues themselves, but the relationship between school and community, for example, has undergone a big shift because wherever teachers tried to reach children, they could do only through the community. So community, which had kind of outsourced to school, children's learning, now has a little more involvement than before. The physical environment expected too is very different. More health and hygiene aspects are required than before. So the school that we are coming back to is not the same as before. So the NEP and the post-pandemic requirements come together. We need to, of course, to bring back children who are dropping out, particularly girls are dropping out in a very big way. So maybe for the next 2 years, both from an NEP and a post-pandemic perspective, we need more flexible design. I know the schools have conducted tests, but that is the really wrong way to start after 2 years. We need more interaction, free-flowing design, where listening, interacting, playing, being with each other, asking children what they like, what they would like, introducing things gently, and then helping them cover the prerequisites of earlier classes is the way to go. Children have already used different variety of learning resources. So just relying on textbook may not be a very good idea. And the pandemic may keep coming back. The climate events will make things uncertain. So perhaps, having kits of learning materials would help. Instead of imposing assessment, having it by demand might be a better idea. The home is as much a learning environment, because don't forget, during the pandemic, that's where we directed a lot of learning. So how can that now take place? It's important again to trust teachers to provide them with multiple options, so that for different contingencies, every school is going to be very different, so that they can take the right decision, empower them for this. Provide now under the learning recovery program, each teacher will be given a tablet. So what kind of resources should be in it is something to think about. One thing I would like to see is to create an index of responsiveness, which defines how well the teacher support system, which is CRC, BRC in particular, responds to the needs of students, teachers, HMs, and communities. Monitor and make it publicly available. All of this can already be done, because different aspects have been tried out in different parts of the country. So this is something which is readily available for the next 2 years. It will both help us overcome pandemic as well as do better with the NEP. In the medium term, I'm not going to talk of long term because that's a little too far away.
Apologies for the intrusion, sir.
Yeah.
We take some questions in a couple of minutes. I think there are a lot of questions coming in the chat.
Okay.
Yes, sir.
All right. So would you prefer a few questions at this time taken?
We could perhaps in 2 minutes, so we could begin with the questions, because I think there are a lot of questions.
All right. Okay. Wow. I have gone only halfway through what I have to say. Okay. How are parents going to accept the kind of something which we should talk about is that any shift requires a large-scale social buy-in, and we really need to implement a process of engaging with community, with parents, and bringing them over to this. Simply making a policy is not enough. For anything to roll out, you need the system to be ready, you need the society to be ready. And that's where this would have to be done. There are many ways of doing this, apart from social media, large-scale campaign. I would say that a program wherein a school teacher invites community members, parents, and creates a set of interesting experiences for them, where they go through what kind of testing is involved and discuss how they can support it, and make them partners rather than simply someone who has to go through it whether they like it or not. And that's a good way to bringing in. Major challenges for implementation I have talked about, and I will keep talking about. For higher order, that's an important question, higher order skill development. Firstly, there are many varying, differing opinions on what is higher order skill, why it is important. So I think NCERT or others need to bring out a discussion paper on this and share it on large scale. But in a classroom, I let me make it as simple as I can. Currently, teachers ask questions which begin with what, where, which, when, and who. If you start asking questions which begin with why, how, and if, you will find that already a shift is starting to happen. If you're asking all the time questions to which you know the answer, and you expect children to give that kind of answer, then you're not doing higher order learning. When you ask a question where student may say something you don't quite expect, then you're likely to be doing a higher order work. So with these two or three very simple strategies. I would say we should begin and go ahead on that. Is teacher well-being addressed seriously? Yes, that's a big issue, I would say. Our system is so hierarchical. It is so driven by this command and control that, and the peculiar thing is that as you go higher up, those who are higher, they have less stake. They have nothing to lose if a system doesn't function. They have nothing to lose if they misbehave with the teachers. And unfortunately, that leads to a situation where teacher well-being is not only not addressed, often those who are responsible for that well-being are the reason for that well-being not being there. And that's the reason why I'm also addressing a lot of this to leadership issues and positions, which have to be addressed. This is something which cannot be done by teachers alone. The NDP does have a statement on children with disabilities, but I would say that this needs a little more nuance. It's all about provisioning. Students, they should be given more time or materials, aids and appliances. But actually, children with disabilities need a lot more than that. They need a different set of relationships. They need a different set of processes. They need a range of measures which make them feel welcomed, participating. They may make them feel successful and not only pitiable creatures. So that shift, I believe, needs a lot more thought than has been given till now. So as I was saying, in the medium term, there's a lot that we can do. I'll share this PPT and people can take a look at it later. One important point right now is that right now, I think Professor Seshadri also mentioned that the national curriculum framework is being developed. Now, this needs to emphasize life skills, learning skills, bring in community as a knowledge partner, emphasize socio-emotional learning and higher order learning. And all of this, especially in the resources that are developed, this is a process that is ongoing at the moment. So it's an opportunity to make this happen. For anyone who is a leader, I think the important thing is to develop a set of a common understanding. This also has to do with the issue of teacher well-being. I believe that this is a process that has to start with at the top to clearly lay out what is the belief, vision, what is the belief and assumption, what is the approach. How do you see ground realities? Let me explain ground realities. Do you know most teachers are teaching more than one class at one time in India? Multi-grade is a common situation. Most students are not able to attend. There are hardly any students who get 800 hours of attendance in India, yet everything is made assuming 800 hours of attendance. So it's a design to fail situation. There's a lot that is being introduced, but it is not tested enough. So we need to bring that in. And if we want not to repeat the mistakes of the earlier time, we need to take into account what happened in the last 30 years, what prevented us from achieving success. For example, if there's a plane crash, the aviation industry analyzes it minutely to make sure that no other plane crashes for that reason. We are not doing that enough for education. We need to know what was tried, why it did not work. And if those conditions are present again, the likelihood is that it will not work. And so how can we go to a different level? As a result, we expect transformative leadership, responsive and adaptive leadership, and generative. Generative is a leadership which is opposed to coercive leadership. Coercive leadership is that if you do not follow what my instruction, I can punish you in some way or the other. Generative leadership is when teachers feel very happy that you are our leader and we want to do things with you. That's the kind of shift that is required. You might say this is a pipe dream, but again, having worked with various levels of people, I can say it is possible. And this is a policy which is a 30-year agenda. Do remember that. Now, one question people should have is that can ordinary people, ordinary citizens do anything? Isn't this, all these expectations aren't they too big, too impossible? How can we begin? So there are a few things you can do. First is that you can avoid these 4 bullet approaches. Do not become a technosaurus. Do not think that technology can solve everything. Technology does not solve things. Technology ends up doing what you would do with or without technology. If you use technology mainly to answer questions, it means your assumption is children are empty vessels to be filled up, not those who can think on their own. And you will end up using technology only to strengthen what was wrong. Do not become a data saurus. Don't think that data is a solution. Because, for example, the first survey in India to show that children of class 6 cannot read a class 3 textbook was done in the year 1986 and was presented to the education secretary. So since then, data is being produced again and again and again. Do you think anyone is bothering about it? Do not become a managersaurus. Don't think that management of system is the way to go about doing things. And certainly do not become an assessosaurus. Do not think that assessment is a solution to it all. It is not. Look at what happened to CCE. There was an attempt to change assessment. It didn't work. It's important to take a 20-year perspective. And please do not be dazzled by all this CSR, startup, jazzy stuff around us. Education is a lot more evolved and a lot more complicated than these superficial solutions. At the same time, there are many solutions which are easy to do, simple to do, which are in our hands, which do work. So as an individual, I would suggest, please read, develop your own understanding. Please appreciate teachers. There are a lot of myths about teachers, especially government teachers. They don't work. In every sector, there are doctors who don't work. There are CEOs who do not work. But with teachers, what happens is that gets repeated ad nauseum, and it is seen as the truth even when it is not. My team meets thousands of teachers every month, and I can tell you a very large number of them work very hard. For example, the pandemic really brought out all the innovation was done by government school teachers. In the entire NGO sector, what happens is the NGOs get their funding because they tell donors that teachers are not doing this or are not able to do this without our input, therefore fund us. So it is in their interest to say that teachers do not work, and that myth has now become very big. So don't fall into that trap. Wherever you are, there will be children around you. Please interact with them, listen to them, find out what do they know. How does a child in a rural area looking at a pile of rope decide that this rope is long enough to reach the water in the well? This is a complex cognitive task. You ask a city child studying in international school, this child cannot do it. Then think of, if this child is in my class, what can I do with this child? I'm sure all of you are doing very interesting things. Please share your experiences. Bring your local knowledge. Maybe you play the sitar. Maybe you know how to do carpentry. Maybe you've traveled all over the country. You know about geography. Why don't you share that knowledge with your school, with local school? Bring in cultural resources. Discuss these issues regularly with your friends. Identify the steps that you can take. This is a very interesting forum. If, for example, can Samvad as a group take up 3 ordinary, easy to do things which will help students' mental health in a big way. For example, what can we do to make students, to enable students to feel welcome? or that they matter, or that they succeed? Is it possible to partner with parents or communities to take certain things forward? For example, is it possible for a member of the community, a health worker, for example, or a farmer or a grandmother, to come and share what they know with children in the school? I'm sure you've come across many good practices. Yes, we are surrounded by a whole lot of difficult situations, but can we share those good practices? And I think it is the responsibility of all of us to be very optimistic. After 35 years of working in education, I think my main achievement is I have not given up hope. If you are a university or a school of education or a department, please encourage research on action that can be taken. Not just a lot of research I see is about what is wrong, but not enough about what needs to be done or what can be done or what has been done and which has worked. Or even what did not work. For example, we know that Padhe Bharat was there. What exactly was it that did not work in it? And how can FLN mission now make sure that it does not fall into the same trap? Please undertake dissemination exercise for larger awareness. For example, everyone talks about high-stake exams being a problem, but we, as an academic community, we are not raising that strongly enough. So how can we lobby for some of those things that we value? If you are a department or university, can you create experimental programs which have a lot of data in them? I find that very funny things like, there are large corporate bodies in India because they think that, now they've learned about performance and profit connection. Therefore, they push teacher through their CSR foundation, they push for teacher education to go in a certain direction. But I don't see universities or schools of education or academics doing enough of that. So are there ways in which we can do it? For example, can you bring in primary teacher as a lecturer in your course for something, even for a little while, and document and see what happens? Policymakers, I have interacted with a large number of them, and I know that they are starved for very good short notes on different aspects which can enable them to make policies on. For example, now we're talking of post-COVID situation. There are so many dimensions, from health and hygiene to socio-emotional aspects, to learning recovery, to assessment, teacher preparation, etc. If there are well-made, evidence-based, clear, easy to understand policy briefs, they will really welcome those. If you're in a university, it's within your means to create learning resources for students and for teachers who want to study more, study further. They cannot be part of, there are open educational resources. So can you take that learning to more people? Don't just wait for them to join your course, but reach out to them. At many points, I brought out the need for school leaders, administrators, policymakers to be different. Can those kind of points be taken up? Can we create courses, programs for them to take part and learn how to be different? For example, administrators who have focused only on administrative issues, is there a way that they can learn to be socially sensitive, emotionally supportive? Can a group of organizations come together to do this? Because this is a huge task. Just as students learn through experience, reflection, application, and consolidation, the education system will also learn through that. If we are able to implement some project in a rapid manner, on scale, which brings credit to those within the system, that's the kind of experience that gives you the entry point. But more important, once that is done, say, for example, a very good way to assess students so that you quickly know what their starting point is for learning recovery. This is done, but then to reflect with all those who were involved at multiple levels, from teachers all the way to education secretary, so that there is deliberation on the findings, which leads everyone to then ask what the next step is, and based on that, create the renewed program of implementation and apply it, do it. And as you do it, whatever succeeds, if you have the data, please put it down, put into a document, codify it, and then ask the system that going ahead, what is the minimum that you expect everyone to do, and then go to the next level. That's how you can get the education system itself to learn. Our group is doing quite a lot of these small things, whatever we can. We are working with some states on on the state curriculum framework. We are sharing insights from our work. Some of these I shared here. We have generated fair amount of textual and digital resources. You can look up our website, mananbooks.in. We have created low-cost learning magazines for foundational learning as well as for classes 6, 7, and 8. Our app called Chachi.app gives a lot of interesting tips to teachers for things they can do in their class. We have created free courses for teachers, etc. Right now, we are creating learning recovery models. We're also trying to get useful technology implementation rather than the kind that has been happening till now. And of course, we are working on capacitating institutions. So lastly, as you would have heard, if you don't know where you're going, any road will take you there. So do not be someone who is merely observing the NEP or is merely a victim of the NEP. Instead, participate in it. Think what you can do in it. Plan. You may have only 10 minutes a week. It's okay. There's a lot you can do in those 10 minutes. Join with others, do things, keep doing them. You'll find things are not working. Do it even more and yet more and succeed. So the NEP, when we say the word N, we mean not only new, but also national. And the word national is all of us. So that's what we really need to move towards. All the best. I hope we get there. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Subirji. I guess there is a certain constraint because of the duration of the session. There are an enormous number of questions that have come. दोस्तों संक्षिप्त में जैसे सुबीर जी ने कहा, शिक्षा का उद्देश्य केवल इम्तिहान और परीक्षा पास करना नहीं है. Education is not about passing an exam. और इन्होंने जो environment and ecology of schools की बात की है, especially ये experience, reflection, application, consolidation, with a focus on socio-emotional learning, बच्चों की मानसिकता जो है, छात्र की मानसिकता जो है, to build a caring and inclusive culture. ठीक है, एनईपी में फाउंडेशन लर्निंग की बात हुई है, पैंडेमिक का क्या प्रभाव पड़ा है, उससे जुड़ी हुई गतिविधियां जो हैं और सुझाव जो है सुबीर जी ने काफी विस्तृत तरीके से बताया है. बट two things I want to say. एक तो ये है, we would strongly affirm what Subir ji said about teachers. Our experience of teachers in Samvad has been the same. Excellent commitment, involvement, and creativity. The other evocative thing Subir ji said going ahead is this concept of index of responsiveness. हम जब क्रिया, प्रक्रिया और प्रतिक्रिया की बात करते हैं एजुकेशन स्फीयर में, क्रिया जो है, योग जो है हमारा, योग जो हम जो करते हैं, और प्रक्रिया जो प्रोसेसेस है, और प्रतिक्रिया जो रेस्पॉन्सिवनेस इन, दिस इज एक्सीडिंगली क्रिटिकल. और इससे जुड़ी हुई एक और बात इन्होंने कही कि बच्चों को किस तरह का सवाल उठाने के लिए हम कहा जाए, हम कहें. और Augusto Boal, when he spoke about theater as being the present tense of the indicative mode, which is I do, as opposed to TV and advertisement, which is the imperative mode, which is do. But theater of the oppressed is the subjunctive mood in two tenses. The past imperfect, what if I were doing that, or the future tense, which is what if I were to do this. तो इस तरह के सवाल जो है, Subir ji, I'm going to give you a lot of the comments and questions that have been put. And if you could, the questions are more important than a comprehensive response given the time, but if you could give us some focused thoughts. While Harini acknowledges the excellent guidelines of early education in Nipun Bharat, the question is how challenging is the role of teachers to change to a facilitator in this context? Subir ji, your comments?
So, as I mentioned, first, teachers cannot do what they have not experienced themselves. So I would spend a few days, a minimum of 4 days with them, enabling them to go through a range of interesting learning experiences. Again, we do this all the time. But more importantly, then we would roll it out in such a way that they start with the easiest to implement things first. The problem is we often ask them to use, for example, materials. These are very complicated. Orally, you can do quite a lot of things which are easier to do. And so there's a sequence in which teachers learn. So help them to do stage by stage rather than all in one go. And if you provide basic minimum support conditions, you can achieve all of this.
इसी से जुड़ी हुई एक प्रश्न है कि एप्लीकेशन ओरिएंटेड एंड एक्सपीरियंशियल लर्निंग में they assume priority in education under NEP with a consequent reduction of the core school curriculum. So what are some of the important teaching methodologies that need to be adopted? दो तीन उदाहरण सुबीर जी.
So I really think the simplest is to ask children to what changes they would make in their environment and how. अगर आपको अपने गांव में एक ऐसा पार्क बनाना है जो बच्चों के लिए है, तो उसके लिए पैसे कहाँ से जुटाएंगे, उसमें क्या रखेंगे, पहले क्या करेंगे, बाद में क्या करेंगे, उसका बजट क्या होगा, उसका जिम्मेदारी किसको क्या देंगे. So I would do things of this kind wherein they would have to make choices. They would have to think, they would have to apply whatever they have learned in their classroom, and that is how they would really learn. This is not as simple as saying project-based learning. सब लोग उसको बोल के उतने में खत्म कर देते हैं. It's a lot more than that. It's about reconfiguring your world.
तो ये रिकन्फिगरिंग द वर्ल्ड की जब आप बात कर रहे हैं, एक तरफ अभिभावक और संतान का रिश्ता और दूसरी तरफ अध्यापक और छात्र का रिश्ता. सवाल ये है कि हाउ डू यू एंगेज विद पेरेंट्स टू एंश्योर दैट दे आर एबल टू ओरिएंट देमसेल्व्स टू द काइंड ऑफ असेसमेंट NEP proposes, which tests application of knowledge in real life situations rather than rote learning.
Sure. So there are, when I first did this kind of thing in a tribal village, there were some questions that आपके यहाँ तो बच्चे खेलते रहते, children are only playing, when will they learn? So we called parents over. We showed them some ordinary things. For example, in Hindi, a sentence like वो भर गया और वो मर गया. The physical difference is very minute. How do children learn to recognize this difference unless we do things wherein they have to compare and contrast physical objects, shapes, and so on? So we did a number of such experiential activities to enable parents to realize the value of what we were doing. You cannot convince people by argument, but you can convince them by generating a different set of, people can argue against a point, but they cannot argue against their own experience. So that's how I would say it has. That's why I'm saying implementing this is the work of everyone, and all of us, wherever we are in the field, have to engage with parents and with everyone else.
जी, सुबीर जी, आपने disadvantaged background की बात की, and the NEP seems to restructure the Department of School Education, thereby mandating the department to focus on the public school system and accessibility of school education. So the Directorate of School Education, on the other hand, is tasked with regulation. इसके बारे में आपके विचार क्या है?
Yeah, so ideally, we should be having a situation where the government mainly focuses on limited number of regulations and leaves a lot of other things to other kinds of groups. I am not given too much thought to it, mainly because I know that it is very difficult for departments to give up the power that they have. And which is why towards the end, I put forward a slide on how will the education system learn. Let me explain this.
जी
अगर आप एडमिनिस्ट्रेटर्स को बुला के ये बात करें कि टीए में चेंज क्या होना चाहिए, तो आपको 6 घंटे की चर्चा मिलेगी. लेकिन अगर आप उन्हीं से बात करें बच्चे क्यों नहीं सीख रहे, तो 10 मिनट के बाद चर्चा नहीं होती है, बिकॉज इट इज अनइम्पोर्टेंट फॉर देम. The primary purpose of education system is to perpetuate itself. So we are dealing with a very difficult situation. By simply changing things in the policy, it is the behavior is not going to start changing. Even the rules, even if they are made differently, will not start happening. So therefore, I think that we need a step-by-step transition to a slightly more hands-off system, however we define it.
तो इससे जुड़े हुए दो सवाल है. एक तो ये है कि what are some of the ways in which the Department of School Education can engage with teachers to get their inputs and suggestions to improve education and policy making. एक तो ये बात है. और दूसरी बात ये है कि जब हायर ऑर्डर स्किल्स की हम बात कर रहे थे, तो उससे जुड़ी हुई स्ट्रैटेजीज और स्ट्रैटेजीज से जुड़ी हुई पॉलिसी आपके दृष्टिकोण में, सुबीर जी, कुछ इस पे विचार आपके?
Okay, so one simple thing is, अगर आप शिक्षकों से बात करते हैं, whatever they say, अगर आप उनको पॉलिसी में शामिल नहीं करते हैं या उतारते नहीं हैं, so you are not going to get much of a response, and that is one of the problems we face all the time. For example, teachers are constantly asking, please reduce non-teaching work that we are forced to do. In fact, even the right to education legally says you cannot ask a teacher to do this, but they are still asked to do a lot of things. So number one, to create the situation of trust, ask teachers input on some very specific limited aspects only to begin with. So I would say things like कि हम आपको लेसन प्लान बना के देते हैं, इसमें हमें क्या परिवर्तन करना चाहिए. Should we stop giving it to you? Should we give it to you with options, or should we give it to you as we are continuing? फिर जो response आता है, आप सच में उसको करिए. So even the administrators have to make a step-by-step progress towards winning the trust of teachers, and also creating that ability in the teachers, not only the willingness to then respond. Otherwise, what happens every time there's a policy discussion, mostly क्या होता है, लोग दिक्कतें बताना शुरू कर देते हैं. That is not a very good way to get a policy shift to happen. Instead, a better way is that this is our objective. Within this objective, what is a step that is better taken? So those are some of the steps that a system could take to connect with teachers. On higher order learning, I think the first thing is to talk about why it is critical. What happens in a system is that it ends up doing whatever is easier to do. The lower order is easier to test, easier to teach, easier to write a kunji on, for example. But higher order ones require you yourself to have those abilities. So define it, generate those abilities, and then move forward with it. I think we need hundreds and hundreds of examples given to teachers. And I would like to see textbooks filled with a large number of questions for which no answers are given. I'll give you two such questions. For slightly younger students or class 6, 7, 8, this story that the hare and the tortoise had a race and therefore slow and steady wins. Do you think the idea that a slow and steady wins because of something that happened in a story, is it a superstition or is it something that should really be followed? I would ask much older students who are in class 11 or 12, why is it that traditional clothes of women do not have pockets? And I'll just leave it at that. See what happens. Try this out. So our problem is we are not comfortable unless there's a clear right answer. Why are we bothered about it? The more important thing is what is the kind of engagement that happens. So that's the kind of condition. I would like to give teachers a lot of such examples, encourage them to try them out, give me feedback, then move in a slow manner towards something better. And in all this, teachers themselves will have to be able to develop the ability to engage with this and to be comfortable with not having the right arm.
क्या बात है। तो ये वही बात हुई जो रॉक सिंगर फ्रैंक ज़ैपा ने कहा था, इंफॉर्मेशन इज नॉट नॉलेज, नॉलेज इज नॉट विजडम, wisdom is not truth, truth is, of course he goes on to say that it's love for process, in his case the love of music, that तो सवाल उठाना और एक तरह से बच्चों के साथ ऐसा रिश्ता बनाना जो आदेश उपदेश अपेक्षा पे आधारित नहीं है, लेकिन वार्तालाप की संस्कृति जो है, the culture of conversations through which you co-construct knowledge, and that's the way indeed that some of the challenges to the implementation of NEP's new approach to teaching methodologies and assessment can be addressed. साथियों, मैंने ये भी नोट किया है कि कई लोगों ने hands raised option यूज किया। अनिल चौबे जी, मैंने आपका hand raised option देखा था। समय की पाबंदी की वजह से हम लोग चैट से क्वेश्चन ले रहे हैं, तो लेकिन प्लीज बी रीअश्योर्ड दैट वी हैव नोटेड योर इंटरेस्ट। और सबसे बड़ी बात तो ये है सुबीर जी, आमतौर पे 90 मिनट के सत्र में क्या होता है कि 150 लोग अगर आए, 90 मिनट में करीब 60 या 50 रहते हैं। इस विषय का महत्व इतना है कि 90 मिनट से ऊपर हो चुके हैं, केवल 12 या 13 लोग सत्र से बाहर हुए हैं। ये संकेत है और सबूत है कि एनईपी का मामला जो है और एनसीएफ की जो तैयारी हो रही है, इसको किस गंभीरता से लोग इससे जूझ रहे हैं और इसके बारे में मनन चिंतन कर रहे हैं। सुबीर जी, संवाद की तरफ से हम लोग बहुत आभारी हैं। मंडे मूड्स में आप शामिल हुए। अनिल चौबे जी विनती कर रहे हैं, प्लीज अलाउ मी टू स्पीक। चलिए अनिल जी, क्या याद रखेंगे आप अनम्यूट करके कहीं डालिए जो आप कहना चाहते हैं।
जी सर, प्रणाम सर। केवल एक बात पूछनी थी कि हम बार बार बहुत सारे सवाल हैं, लेकिन एक सवाल है कि एनईपी, एनसीएफ और उससे पहले कई बार हम लर्निंग और रोट लर्निंग में अंतर कर रहे हैं। ये कह रहे हैं कि समझ का स्तर बढ़ना चाहिए, बच्चों में कौशल विकसित होना चाहिए, बच्चे रटाऊ किताबें ना रटे, लेकिन क्या ये ग्राउंड लेवल पर संभव हो पा रहा है? हम फिर एक बार पढ़ाई लिखाई दो चीजों को लेके सैद्धांतिक रूप से बच्चों के स्तर पर वही काम करने लगते हैं और अंडरस्टैंडिंग कहीं अलग हो जाती है, जो केवल एनईपी में रहती है, जो केवल एनसीएफ में रहती है, जो केवल पॉलिसी में रहती है, और ग्राउंड लेवल पर हम केवल किताबें पढ़ाते हैं, रटाते हैं सारे बच्चों को, चाहे वो परिषदीय हो चाहे किसी बोर्ड के हो। तो सर, ये कैसे संभव है कि हम अंडरस्टैंडिंग, स्किल और इन चीजों पे काम कर पाए?
सुबीर जी,
ठीक है, बहुत सरल है ये। हाँ, हम शिक्षकों को बंधन में डाल के कहते हैं बच्चों को मुक्त करो, तो ये तो होने वाला नहीं है। आप शिक्षक को मुक्त करिए ना। आप क्यों शिक्षक में थोपते हैं कि ऐसे ही
नहीं कर रहे हैं सर नहीं कर रहे हैं,
तो इसीलिए
टीचिंग प्लान दे रहे हैं, इस तरह से पढ़ाओ, मॉड्यूल बना रहे हैं, इस तरह से पढ़ाओ।
अनिल जी, यहाँ हम अभी वाद विवाद में शामिल नहीं होंगे। मुद्दा आपने बहुत महत्वपूर्ण उठाया है और हम सुबीर जी की प्रतिक्रिया सुनते हैं और इसके बाद मैं इस सत्र को सौरभ के काबिल हाथों में सौंपता हूं ताकि सत्र को ये संपन्न समाप्त करें। सुबीर जी, कुछ आखिरी विचार आपकी तरफ से?
So, just taking off from what you said at the end, I think this is one important point, that what is a school? A school is a set of processes within a set of relationships or higher order learning. But equally important, the point that you mentioned, a school is a set of conversations. स्कूल जो है वो एक वार्तालाप का समूह है और उसमें वार्तालाप का मतलब ये हुआ कि वो दो तरफा है, इट इज टू साइडेड, I think, if just to sort of distill everything that I have said, the culture we are talking about is one of listening. Can teachers listen to children? Can officials listen to teachers? If that is the shift that I believe NEP and post-pandemic learning recovery really requires, instead of trying to tell everyone every time, I know this session I've been only telling from my side, but if I had a different situation, believe me, I would be listening. So that's my request to everyone. How can we shift towards a listening culture is what we really have to look at.
तो नगेंद्र तिवारी जी कहते हैं कि सर इस नदी की धार में ठंडी हवा बहती है तो है, नाव झज्जर ही सही लहरों से टकराती है। सर शिक्षक को तो बंधन मुक्त करके शिक्षण कार्य करने दिया जाए। तो अंत में मैं यही कहूंगा, अर्चना जी, I've noted your and let me assure you, Archana Saxena, that given the enthusiasm, perhaps Samvad will consider.
Sorry for the interruption, sir.
Samvad will.
Sir, I have a question, sir. Please.
If you will allow me, so what we will do, given the importance of this subject, is Samvad will do an internal discussion and plan another Monday Moods where we will call back Subir Shukla. We will not have a presentation, but we will have only an interaction as part of Monday Mood. ये हमारे तरफ से
sorry.
And keep 2 hours. 1.5 घंटे में नहीं होगा।
और एक और आखिरी चीज मैं कहना चाहता हूं कि लोग ये पूछे कि शिक्षा का उद्देश्य क्या है, what is the purpose of education? Sometimes maybe it's useful to say that the true purpose of education, literacy, learning, ये सब साक्षरता, गणित वगैरह सब सही है, livelihood, life skills सब सही है, हम इससे असहमत नहीं हैं, लेकिन शायद it is the development of an egalitarian personhood, एक समान अधिकारी व्यक्तित्व, the development of a socially responsive and responsible citizen, नागरिकता, and the development of an identity imbued with aesthetic sensibility, एक कला, प्रकृति, संगीत, रंगमंच, रिश्ते, भावनाएं और इस तरह की चीजें जो हैं, और ये वार्तालाप के जरिए हो तो वाह क्या बात कहें। Saurabh, over to you to close the session.
Thank you very much, Dr. Seshadri. And on behalf of Team Samvad, we'd like to extend sincere thanks to Mr. Subir Shukla for taking the time out and actually going into such a comprehensive discussion, I think, on the NEP. When we request Subir ji to actually provide this talk, Sir's only concern was, how to really address the breadth of the NEP, considering the complexities of the document and the framework. But I think today it's been quite a fantastic learning opportunity for all of us to understand what, from an implementation point of view, what are some of the basics of the NEP. So once again, thank you very much, sir, for joining us today. To all the participants, there's been quite a lot of participation and a lot of interest in today's session. So we're very grateful to all those who've joined us today. Please stay tuned to all our social media accounts for more information on upcoming Monday Moods with Samvad. We are likely to have our next session on 11th April. Similar to what we've done this month, we will likely have 2 Monday Mood sessions in April. The first one beginning on 11th April. And we will share more details on the topic and other details in the coming weeks. So thank you very much, everyone, and have a very good evening. Thank you.
And we will also plan a special session. और उस स्पेशल सेशन में मैं ये भी कहना चाहता हूँ, वो स्पेशल सेशन जो है 2 भाषाओं में हम साथ करेंगे। वो सेशन हिंदी और अंग्रेजी दोनों में हम करेंगे और उसमें सिर्फ चर्चा होगी। और शायद उस सेशन को हम 90 मिनट नहीं 2 घंटे का सेशन, एक मंडे मूड्स का एक स्पेशल सेशन जो है, ये हमारे संवाद की तरफ से ये आप सब लोगों के लिए हमारा वायदा है।
ठीक है, थैंक यू ऑल एवरीवन, थैंक यू, नमस्ते, मिलेंगे जरूर।
जी नमस्कार सबको।
नमस्कार।